Hello and welcome to another quiet journey into the slow, drifting depths of the past. Tonight, we follow the murmuring flow of the Nylon Shint, patient and eternal. We travel back not just hundreds of years, but thousands, to a world where time was measured by the rise and fall of the sacred river, where the sun itself was a god, and where your life, your suffering, and even your death could be considered holy service. In this episode, we'll lie low in the shadows of temple walls and golden pyramids, where even the humblest servant lived beneath the gaze of immortal kings. We'll move through dry winds, soft footprints in sun-baked sand, and the constant burden of devotion. But don't worry, you're not being asked to serve tonight. Just to listen and let history carry you gently away. Now, take a slow breath and imagine yourself as a servant of the Pharaoh. Akhenaten is one of history's most peculiar rulers, a man so committed to the sun god Aten, he changed his name, his religion. In the 2nd century BC, the ruler of Egypt came from the city of Thebes. He'd lived among commoners. He knew what they liked: bread and circuses. So when he took the throne, he gave it to them. Good. All those extra temples and festivals were taking away from their power, their influence, their money. Akhenaten didn't care. He partied on, and in the middle of it all, he fell in love. Either way, he asked his wife to give him back the throne. After King Tutankhamun took the throne, he basically reversed everything Akhenaten had done. And hey, see you next time. Oh, and did you know that inside every one of us, there is a secret Egyptian? The old gods were back in power, and Aten was once again just a minor deity. But history remembers Akhenaten, not as a party king or a failed pharaoh, a traitor who tried to change Egypt's religion and failed. She refused. The end of Akhenaten's experiment was near. He spent his last days painting, composing poetry, and hanging out with friends. He died happy, but he never got to see his true legacy. Her name was Kia. She was a nobody. Well, actually, she was somebody, a member of the royal court. In fact, she was in charge of nothing. And that's probably why the king fell in love with her. She was free. Feasting, fighting, pharaohs, and parties. He spent time watching them work, trying to learn their jobs. One time he even tried his hand at making beer. He decided regular people were pretty cool. In fact, he thought being a pharaoh was overrated. So, he did something crazy. He stepped down. It was 1348 BC. The king gave the throne to his wife and took on a new name, meaning the effervescent one. He put on a new look, to a long white beard, a blue striped wig, and some serious bling. No more majestic golden jewelry for him. Now he wore brightly colored glass beads. He even traded his royal scepter for a walking stick. He looked less like a god and more like a high priest. But all the while, his advisors kept warning him, hey, you might want to pay more attention to the, divine duties. See. While his father, the great Pharaoh Akhenaten, had transformed Egyptian religion by making the sun disk Otan supreme god, his mother, Queen Tai, was still very much a fan of the old ways. So the young king grew up with both Aten and tradition under one roof. And while he loved a party, he also had a real soft spot for the poor. As he grew older, he started visiting the sick and elderly, bringing gifts and food. He really wanted to be remembered as a good, pious king, and he knew how to make that happen. More temples, more festivals, more sacrifices to the gods. And the people loved it. He was their bread and circus king. But the priests hated it. After marrying Kia, the king became even more obsessed with the ordinary people. But after 2 years, something happened. Something terrible. Pharaoh Smenkhare died. Maybe he got bored of being a regular guy. Or maybe he missed the power. It turns out the priests were so thrilled about the whole sun god is supreme thing. Was Akhenaten a traitor or a rebel? You decide in the comments below. Did he rule for 12 years or 17? Did he live to be 30 or 60? What was his birth name? How did he die? Why do we have so few records of his reign? It's easy to get lost in these questions about Akhenaten, sometimes called Akhenaten. What is harder to question is the impact he had on ancient Egypt. Who ruled Egypt from Thebes from around 1390 to 1353 BCE. Amenhotep. The third's legacy lives on in grand building projects and divine claims, including one particularly striking, that he was the son of Ra, the sun god. They are shown as humans in love, sharing the joys and sorrows of family life, a radical departure from the usual imagery of divine kingship. These paintings are tender, sometimes comical, often strangely moving. They suggest a pharaoh who wanted to share more than just power. He wanted to share light. Yet during Amenhotep III's reign, the sun god was only one, among many deities, including the more prominent Amun, king of the gods. As Aten rose, Amun's temples were closed. His name was chipped from monuments. Offerings were redirected, and the powerful priesthood of Amun, wealthy, ancient, and deeply entrenched, was cast into shadow. This was not merely a change of faith, but a dismantling of Egypt's spiritual infrastructure. Akhenaten's story begins with his unusual religious devotions. He was not the first pharaoh to turn toward the sun for inspiration. And if you want to learn more about ancient Egypt, you can watch our full series, The Mysteries of Egypt. The gods were appeased, rituals were performed, temples were cared for. The boy king Tutankhamun came to power and quickly changed his name to Tutankhamun, reopening Amun's temples and undoing many of his father's changes. Nor was he the first to imagine a simpler, purer faith. But he dared to set his sights higher than any of his predecessors. He dreamed of a world without gods, except one, a world enlightened by Otans. Akhenaten may have believed his new religion would usher in a golden age. But famine, unhappy, nobles, and enemies at the borders. Many Egyptians struggled during his reign, and some questioned his sanity. Akhenaten's predecessors, including Amenhotep III, had celebrated Arayan hymns. Akhenaten took this further. He elevated Aten above all other gods. At first, this meant hymns and shrines, but then larger temples carved open to the sky with no roofs, so that Aten's light could fall directly upon the altar. He even changed his name to Akhenaten, meaning effective for Aten, and he moved his capital to a new city he built between Thebes and Memphis, and named it Akhetanan. It was here that Akhenaten lived out his vision, showing Aten's rays, bringing life, order, and light to his subjects. In his famous sculpture, the sun god appears not as a falcon-headed man or a ram, but simply as a radiant disk with human hands outstretched in a gesture of generosity. He sent officials to gather every sunrise so he could greet it. He commissioned artists to show him and his family bathed in the glow of Aten. This last was not only a religious experience, but also a revolution in art. Traditionally, pharaohs were shown as strong, youthful, and eternal. Akhenaten's statues showed him and his wife, Nefertiti, in strange, slender forms. Some scholars believe he suffered from a medical condition called Marfan syndrome, which can cause the bones and joints to become loose and stretchy. So it seems appropriate that one of the most striking images of the era shows Akhenaten with his arms outstretched, like a supplicant reaching for the sun god in the sky. Others have argued that the artwork is not symbolic of illness, but rather an honest depiction of a tender moment between the pharaoh and his queen. However he is portrayed, Akhenaten is shown in intimate scenes with his wife, cradling children, leaning close beneath Aten's outstretched rays. But not everyone benefited from Akhenaten's revolution. For centuries, balance had been maintained. Akhenaten ruled for about 17 years and then he died. There is no grand tomb for him. His burial was humble, and his legacy was fragmented. In the end, Akhenaten was not the first to seek the sun for divinity. Thank you for watching this episode of Ancient Worlds. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe. Meet the women who plotted the fall of kingdoms. Welcome to Power, the series that brings you the stories of those who dared to dream big, break the rules, and change the world. Did you know her story began like any other young girl's? She grew up in a noble family, getting an education reserved for princes and pharaohs. They complained that she meddled in affairs of state and undermined their authority. Even the priests hated her because she tried to reform the religion and strip them of their power. So as soon as their beloved Pharaoh was dead, they turned on her. They arrested her, took away her possessions, and declared her high treason. They locked her up in the palace, stripped her of her titles, and erased her name from official records. But Nefertiti wasn't done yet. After careful planning, she unleashed her revenge. She escaped from house arrest, seized control of the capital, executed her enemies, and took the throne for herself. Finally, she was the most powerful woman in Egypt. Her reign marked a turning point in the country's history. Though she was a foreigner with no royal blood, she proved that ambition and intelligence could conquer all obstacles. After her death, Egypt fell into civil war, and the once great empire split into pieces. But nobody noticed. Everyone was too busy fighting over who would be the next big thing. Thus ended the Golden Age of Egypt. At 15, she married the future pharaoh Akhenaten, a match made in heaven for him. Thousands of years later, a German archaeologist named Ludwig Borchardt stumbled upon a secret chamber in the ruins of an ancient palace. Inside, he found a bust of a beautiful woman with an enigmatic smile. It was unlike anything he had seen before, and he couldn't stop thinking about it. Back in Berlin, experts realized they had something truly special. They cleaned off the layers of grime, revealing a face that had captivated the world for centuries. But who was she? Well, nobody knew until recently. A new study suggests that the bust was not of an ordinary woman, but of Egypt's most famous female pharaoh. The bust currently resides in Berlin's News Museum, where it has drawn crowds of visitors for decades. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people come to see it. Many believe that gazing upon the bust will bring them luck. Others come because they simply can't resist her mysterious smile. Whatever the reason, all who see the bust are captivated by her beauty and charm. But what if I told you there's another bust hiding in plain sight? A bust even more beautiful than the first. A bust that holds the key to unlocking all of history's mysteries. He doted on his bride, showering her with affection. Beautiful gifts and titles proclaiming her beauty. She became great of praises, his beloved hereditary princess. Great of praises, main king's wife, his beloved, great of praises, hereditary princess. Under her husband's rule, Egypt would change forever. Together, they established a new capital city, moved the empire's center north, built magnificent temples, and ushered in a golden age of peace. But none of that was enough for Nefertiti. She wanted more. Much more. In this episode, we'll talk about Nefertiti, the most famous woman in Egyptian history. Arranged marriages were common back then, and she had no say in the matter. Forced into a union with her uncle, she bore him children, served as his chief consort, ministered to his needs, and did her best to please him. But the pharaoh wasn't interested in her. All he had eyes for was and not just her beauty, but also her brains and drive. He liked that she was ambitious, loyal, and quick to learn. He appointed her his chief advisor and tasked her with important duties. Then he went one step further and made her regent, while he took an extended vacation to recover from an illness. For all practical purposes, Nefertiti was running the kingdom. The pharaoh was still technically in charge, but he was hardly involved. And everyone knew who was really calling the shots. So when he died, there was little doubt that Nefertiti would take the throne. But she didn't. She took something better. Much better. Meanwhile, the pharaoh's sister, Isat, wasn't happy with her lot in life. The pharaoh's advisors weren't too fond of Nefertiti. But we can't end our story here. Because Nefertiti's legacy lived on in the most unexpected way. Evening has come to Thebes. The day's heat is fading, and the sky is painted in broad strokes of deep violet and pale gold. The Nile moves slowly nearby, reflecting the firelight from braziers lit along the palace terraces. The garden is quiet, save for the occasional rustle of reeds. Palm trees sway gently in the evening air. Beyond them, the stars begin to emerge sharp, indifferent. A servant washes your feet in perfumed water. Another applies a cone of scented fat to your head, a mark of status. Flutists with soft, reedy tones. A singer whose voice floats above it all, neither loud nor piercing, but steady and hypnotic. Dancers follow graceful, trained, adorned with bracelets that chime like whispers. You do not clap. No one does. Appreciation here is shown in restraint. A slight nod, a soft-knit expression. The performance is not entertainment. Everything tonight is an offering. It will melt slowly in the warmth of the night, releasing sweet myrrh and lotus oil as the evening unfolds. Your linen tunic is finely woven, nearly translucent. The priests, in turn, depend on merchants for exotic good cedar, which means boats, which means the Nile, which means taxes and scribes and permissions granted with a nod from someone like you. Everyone smiles, but every smile hides a calculation. This is not politics in the modern sense. It is a delicate choreography of deference and advantage, of praise and proximity. If your seat moves closer to the host next month, you are rising. If the priest doesn't greet you by name, You are fading. Around your neck, a collar of beads in blue and gold. Your hands carry nothing, only expectation. As the night deepens, so do the shadows on the courtyard walls. The music softens. Servants refill cups more slowly now. Cones of scented fat have melted, leaving trails of oil, perfuming the hair and robes of every guest. Not drunk, but distant. The edge of sleep hovers somewhere nearby, held off only by the cool air and the warm taste of honey still on your tongue. You say little, you listen more, and when at last you rise to leave, you do so not with haste, but with ceremony. A bow to the host, a quiet word to the priest, a knowing glance to the merchant's daughter, and then you step once more into the soft darkness. The river hums, the reeds whisper, and somewhere far above, Orion watches. You are not a laborer tonight. You are not a servant. You are among the elite one of the few, the powerful, the adorned. The estate is large whitewashed walls, columns painted with scenes of gods and lotus flowers, tiled floors, cool beneath embroidered sandals. You enter the gathering hall. The room is long and open, lined with stone columns. Torches flicker gently, casting a warm, uneven glow across polished alabaster bowls and intricate gold tableware. The air is rich with scent, cedarwood, cinnamon, frankincense, and something faintly floral, drifting from the robes of a priest seated near the host. Elite banquets are not just meals. They are rituals of influence, displays of wealth, theater performed for the gods and for one another. You take your place near the middle, not so high to draw envy, not so low to be forgotten. Food arrives in waves, not in courses, but in abundance. Dates, figs, and honey cakes. Artfully arranged on reed trays, goose roasted with garlic and coriander. Lotus wine, dark and syrupy, poured into golden goblets. Pickled fish, flavored with cumin and dill. Flatbreads still warm from the outdoor oven. But you eat slowly, deliberately, because the meal is not the main event. It is a backdrop. The true exchange happens in glances, in questions about temple rituals, in soft-voiced offers of land. A priest of Ammon speaks softly to a grain merchant. A general watches. A scribe quietly records the gifts promised during the feast. From a side doorway, musicians appear, harpists with tall, curving instruments. Not all guests are equal. The host is wealthy, but relies on favor from temple priests who control vast estates. Softly, the night fades. And now, your journey along the Nile draws to a close. You've walked beside servants in the dust, worshipped the sun in a forgotten city of light, stood before the pyramids in silence, and sat among the elite in golden halls, but all of it is fading now. As sleep rises like the moon over the river, whatever tomorrow holds, it will not ask you to carry oil jars through the sand. It will not demand tribute at a banquet table. It will not weigh your heart on the scales of Matt. You are safe now. Far from toil, far from temples, drifting in the hush of history, beneath stars that remember everything. Good night, and sleep well.